Before we begin, if you're listening to this alone at night, you're exactly where you should be. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more true horror stories, disturbing encounters, and unexplained events uploaded every day. Now lock your doors, turn off the lights, and let's get into tonight's stories. Every experienced hiker knows one rule: stay on the marked trail. Trails are maintained for a reason. They've been surveyed, mapped, cleared. If you wander off, you're taking a risk. I've hiked for almost 10 years. National parks, state forests, mountain trails. I've gotten turned around before. I've even spent one night in the woods waiting for sunrise. None of those experiences prepared me for the trail that wasn't supposed to exist. Because according to every map I checked afterward, the path I followed had never been built. This happened in the fall of 2023. I was hiking alone through a large national forest in the Appalachian Mountains. The route was rated moderate, about 11 miles round trip. I started just after sunrise. The weather was perfect. Cool air, clear skies, almost no other hikers. The first several hours were exactly what I'd expected. Wooded ridges, small streams, occasional overlooks, nothing unusual. Around 2 in the afternoon, I reached a weathered wooden trail marker. It pointed 2 directions. The official trail continued left. Another narrow path disappeared into the trees on the right. There wasn't any name on the second sign, only a faded arrow. I checked my map. No side trail appeared. Reasonable explanation? An old maintenance road. Maybe an unofficial shortcut hikers had created over the years. At least, that's what I assumed. Curiosity got the better of me. I decided to walk a few hundred yards, just to see where it went. The path looked surprisingly well maintained. No fallen branches, fresh footprints in the dirt, as though people used it regularly. After 10 minutes, I looked at my GPS. The hiking app showed me standing completely off the map. Not beside the trail, not beyond the trail, off the map. The terrain itself simply ended. I restarted the app. Same result. My compass pointed north. The GPS insisted I wasn't anywhere. A cool breeze moved through the trees. Then, I heard footsteps. Behind me. Slow. Measured. Matching my pace. I stopped walking. The footsteps stopped too. I turned around. Nothing. Only the empty trail winding through the trees. I laughed nervously. Probably another hiker just out of sight. Reasonable enough. Mostly. I kept walking. The footsteps returned. One step, then another. Always a second after mine. I turned again. Nothing. The forest had become unusually quiet. No birds. No insects. Even the wind seemed to disappear. About 20 minutes later, the trail ended in a small clearing. At the center stood an old wooden trail register. The kind hikers used to sign their names before entering remote backcountry. I opened it. The first several pages looked ordinary. Names, dates, short notes. Then I noticed something strange. Every entry after the year 1998 used the exact same handwriting. Different names, different pens, same handwriting. My stomach tightened. The final blank line had already been filled out. My name, today's date, the exact time. I hadn't touched the book. A twig snapped somewhere behind me. I turned. A man wearing an old backpack stood at the edge of the clearing. His clothing looked decades out of date. Canvas jacket, heavy leather boots, old aluminum frame pack. He smiled politely. "You finally found the trail. I think I'm lost." He slowly shook his head. "No, you left." Before I could answer, he pointed toward the trees behind me. "The trail closes before sunset." Every instinct told me to leave immediately. I backed away, without taking my eyes off him. The moment I stepped back beneath the trees, he was gone. No footsteps, no broken branches, nothing. I hurried down the trail, trying not to run. After several minutes, I reached the trail marker again. Except, there wasn't a second trail anymore. Only the official path. No sign. No opening through the trees. Nothing. I checked my GPS. Everything looked normal again. My location appeared exactly where it should have been. When I reached the trailhead, the parking lot was almost empty. Only one ranger truck remained. The ranger looked relieved to see me. "You okay?" I nodded. Asked whether there had ever been another trail near the overlook. His expression changed. He quietly asked, "Did you find the old register?" I hadn't mentioned it. He sighed. Years earlier, an unofficial hiking path had existed beyond that ridge. After several disappearances, the trail was permanently closed, removed from maps, blocked off. Eventually, nature reclaimed it. Officially, nothing remained. Mostly. That evening, I downloaded the GPS track from my hiking watch. The first 6 miles looked perfectly normal. Then, 4:43 minutes, the route became a perfectly straight line, not following any terrain, not following any trail, just a line, across blank space. I've hiked hundreds of miles since then. I still love being outdoors. I still explore new places. But if I ever find a trail that isn't marked on the map, I keep walking, because sometimes, the path less traveled was abandoned for a reason. Fire lookout towers are supposed to be empty. Many of them haven't been staffed for years. Some are preserved as historic landmarks. Others are simply left standing in the middle of the wilderness. Most hikers climb them for the view, take a few pictures, then head back down. I did the same thing, until one abandoned fire tower started flashing a light every night. Not toward the forest, not toward the mountains, toward someone walking below. The strange part was, every time the light flashed, my GPS insisted I was completely alone. This happened during the autumn of 2022. I spent a weekend hiking through a remote section of a national forest in northern Idaho. My goal was simple: reach an old fire lookout before sunset, camp nearby, hike back the following morning. The trail covered almost 14 miles, long, but manageable. The first half of the hike felt ordinary. Pine forests, rocky ridges, small creeks, a handful of other hikers heading back toward the trailhead. By late afternoon, I hadn't seen another person in nearly 2 hours. Around 5:30 p.m., I reached the fire tower. It stood on the highest ridge for miles. Old wooden stairs, steel observation platform, a locked cabin at the top. The structure looked weathered, but stable. I climbed the stairs. The view stretched for miles in every direction. Mountain peaks, dense forest, nothing else. No roads, no buildings, just wilderness. I decided to camp about 200 yards from the tower, close enough to photograph sunrise, far enough away to avoid the wind. Just after dark, I noticed something strange. A soft beam of white light swept across the forest. Once, then again, then a third time. It came from the lookout cabin. I frowned. The cabin was locked. There hadn't been anyone inside. Reasonable explanation? Another hiker with a flashlight. Maybe a ranger checking the tower. At least, that's what I assumed. The beam continued, always pointing toward the trail below. Never toward me. Curiosity got the better of me. I climbed back to the tower. The cabin remained locked. The windows were dark. No flashlight. No movement. Yet, the light continued sweeping across the trees. Only now, it came from inside the cabin. I pressed my face against the dusty window. Inside, the room looked abandoned. Old desk, rusted stove, broken chair, nothing else. Then, the light stopped. Somewhere below, I heard footsteps. Not close, far down the mountain. Slow, steady, climbing. I shined my flashlight down the trail. Nothing. The footsteps continued anyway. Crunch, 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 always hidden beyond the next bend. Eventually, they stopped. Exactly beneath the tower. I waited almost 10 minutes. Nothing moved. The forest became completely silent. I returned to my tent, locked my food container, tried to sleep. Around 2:40 a.m., I woke to another flash of light. This time, it wasn't sweeping the forest. It was flashing directly onto my tent. 3 quick flashes. Pause. 3 more. I stepped outside. The tower stood silhouetted against the moonlight. No visible light. No people. Then, another flash. From inside the cabin. 3. Pause. 3. My stomach tightened. I climbed back toward the tower. Halfway up the stairs, I noticed fresh muddy footprints. Boot prints. Leading upward. None coming back down. The cabin door remained locked from the outside. I radioed the Forest Service emergency frequency. Only static answered. The next morning, I told a ranger what had happened. He listened quietly, then asked, "Did the light flash 3 times?" I hadn't mentioned the pattern. He nodded slowly. Years earlier, before the tower closed, lookouts used 3 quick flashes to signal hikers below. It meant someone was missing. Search teams should respond immediately. The practice ended decades ago. Mostly, several months later, the Forest Service restored the old tower. New stairs, fresh paint, updated safety rails. Workers replacing the cabin floor discovered an old logbook hidden beneath loose floorboards. The final completed entry ended abruptly. It read, "Saw someone climbing the trail after dark. No response to signals. Going down to meet them." No further entries followed. The ranger showed me a photograph of the last lookout assigned to the tower. The man wore a canvas jacket, old hiking boots, a wide-brimmed hat. He looked strangely familiar, because I'd seen him, standing beside my campsite, only for a second, reflected in the tower window. I never told the ranger that part. A year later, I returned to the same forest with friends. The tower had become a popular hiking destination. Families climbed the stairs. Children took pictures. Everything felt completely normal. As we started hiking back, I glanced over my shoulder. The observation cabin stood empty. Then, for just a moment, a bright white light flashed 3 times, toward the trail below. None of my friends noticed. I didn't tell them, because some lookout towers never stop watching, and sometimes they're still trying to warn someone who hasn't realized they're lost. The easiest part of any hike is usually going back. You've already seen the trail. You know where the stream crossings are. You remember the overlooks. The route feels familiar. That's why experienced hikers often say, if you pay attention on the way in, you'll never get lost on the way out. I believed that, until every trail marker I passed started changing directions. Not once, not twice. Every single time I looked away. The strange part wasn't that the signs moved. It was that my GPS insisted. I was walking perfectly straight. This happened during the autumn of 2023. I was backpacking through a remote wilderness area in Oregon. The trip lasted 3 days. I planned to camp near an alpine lake before hiking back to the trailhead the following afternoon. The route wasn't difficult, about 16 miles in total. Well marked, frequently traveled. I'd downloaded offline maps before leaving. Everything should have been straightforward. The first day went exactly as expected. The weather stayed cool. The trail remained easy to follow. Occasionally I'd pass another hiker. Everyone smiled. Everyone headed in the opposite direction. By evening, I reached the lake, set up my tent, cooked dinner, watched the sun disappear behind the mountains. Nothing unusual. The following morning, dense fog covered the valley. Visibility dropped to less than 50 feet. I packed my gear, started hiking back. About 30 minutes later, I reached the first trail junction. A weathered wooden sign pointed left. Trailhead, 7 miles. Exactly what I expected. I followed it. Another mile passed. I stopped to drink some water. When I looked back, the sign now pointed right. Same sign. Same lettering. Different direction. I laughed quietly. Maybe I'd remembered it wrong. Reasonable explanation. At least initially. I checked my GPS. The route still showed me moving toward the parking lot. Everything looked normal. I continued walking. Another 40 minutes. Another trail marker. Parking, 5 miles. Arrow pointing downhill. I followed it. A few minutes later, I glanced back. The arrow now pointed uphill. My stomach tightened. I walked back to the sign, ran my fingers across the wood. Nothing looked unusual. No loose bolts. No rotating post. Nothing. The arrow had simply changed. The forest felt unusually quiet. No birds. No wind. Even the leaves remained perfectly still. Then I heard footsteps. Somewhere behind me. Crunch. 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 Matching my pace. Whenever I stopped, they stopped. Whenever I started again, they returned. I never saw anyone. Around noon, I reached a small wooden bridge crossing a narrow creek. I remembered crossing it the previous day. Halfway across, I noticed fresh muddy footprints. Boot prints, leading toward me. None led away, as though someone had walked onto the bridge, then disappeared. I crossed anyway. Trying not to think about it, the next trail marker stood just beyond the bridge. It carried only one word: return. No arrow, just the word. I checked my GPS again. The blue route had vanished. Only a straight gray line stretched across the screen. No terrain, no trail, nothing. My location icon continued moving, but the map itself had disappeared. Hours passed, or at least, it felt that way. The sun never seemed to move. The fog never lifted. Every trail junction looked exactly like the last. Then, I reached the same bridge again. Same muddy footprints. Same weathered boards. I hadn't turned around. I was certain of it. I crossed anyway. The trail marker beyond it now read, "You already did." My pulse quickened. I turned around immediately. The bridge was gone. Only forest. No creek. No water. Nothing. I started walking faster. Almost jogging. Every few hundred yards, another trail marker appeared. Each carried a different message. Too far. Almost dark. Keep going. None included arrows anymore. Late that afternoon, I spotted someone standing beside the trail. An older man wearing faded hiking clothes. Canvas backpack. Wooden walking stick. He looked as though he'd been waiting. "You've been following the signs," he said. I nodded. "They keep changing." He smiled sadly. "They always do." "Which way is the trailhead?" He pointed into the forest. "Not toward the trail. Don't follow the signs. Follow the footprints." Before I could ask what he meant, he stepped behind a tree. I hurried after him. Nothing. He was gone. Then I looked down. Fresh boot prints crossed the trail. Not mine. Heading through the woods. I followed them. For nearly 20 minutes. The footprints never wavered. Never doubled back. Eventually, the trees opened. I stepped into the trailhead parking lot. Only 3 vehicles remained, including mine. Relief washed over me. A park ranger sat inside a truck near the entrance. He walked over immediately. "You all right?" I nodded. Asked how long the trail had been closed because of the fog. He looked confused. There wasn't any fog today. I stared at him. The whole mountain was covered. He slowly shook his head. It was sunny all afternoon. The ranger studied me for another moment, then quietly asked, "Did you happen to see the old trail markers?" I hadn't mentioned them. He sighed. Years earlier, before the current trail system existed, older wooden signs marked a completely different route through the forest. After several hikers became disoriented, every original marker was removed. The new trail replaced them. Officially, none of the old signs remained. Mostly, back home, I uploaded my GPS track. The first half of the hike looked normal. Then, for almost 4 hours, the route became a perfect circle, less than 200 feet wide. According to the GPS, I'd never left that small area. Yet